Alright, so this presentation was originally done at the FLL Ontario Kickoff, and I thought it would be a good idea to put this out on YouTube because it's kind of interesting and a good resource. So, basically what this is about is the EV3 and the NXT and the differences between the two in pretty much everything you can think of. So this is about me. These are all the seasons that I've been part of. I started off with FLL in 2006, and in 2008, when we qualified for Worlds, we saw another fellow Canadian team, 11-14, win the World Championships for FRC. So I kind of got hooked and got involved in 2009. In 2010, I got involved with VEX, which is another program. So I've been around for a while, and just a little interesting to see how many seasons you've been part of after a few years. So, just to give an outline, basically what we're going to do is we're going to start with hardware. What comes in the set, then motors and sensors and what's different between the two, comparing how accurate they are or how their functionality is improved. Then talking about the actual brick or programming device that you actually plug into, and compatibility between them. So whether the NXT sensors work with the NX or the EV3 and vice versa, and same with motors. And then we're moving on to software, where we'll talk about briefly the interface, some block changes, how the program files are kind of structured differently with the EV3, and a few other little things. So, hardware. First main thing for the EV3 is its auto ID function. So what this does is it automatically looks at all the ports and can tell you what sensor is plugged into what port. Same with the types of motors. So whether you're doing a large motor or a small or a medium motor, then it'll be able to detect what's in that slot. So that's kind of useful for debugging. Sometimes with the NXT, like put a sensor in the wrong port, and that'd be no fun. So this helps you, and it pops up with a little warning if you didn't put it in the right port. So there's new sensors. The color sensor, there's a new version. There's a new touch sensor, well, as in a new version. Same with the ultrasonic sensor. And the motor, the large motor, is kind of the new version of the NXT motor. And then there's the medium motor, which is just a smaller version, or a smaller motor that's new for the EV3. And then some brick improvements, which we'll get on later. So, what comes in the core EV3 set? We have 2 touch sensors, 1 color sensor, 1 gyro, and 1 ultrasonic sensor. So that's if you're getting the educational set. The retail ones, well, a specific retail one, doesn't have the ultrasonic sensor and instead has infrared, which is illegal for FLL. As for motors, there's 2 large motors and 1 medium motor. And parts, pretty standard pieces. There's some newer Technic pieces that are kind of one large, that you can make one large structure out of, and then the ball caster. So the ball caster is something that FLL teams have really put some interest into because it's a really smooth back wheel. Instead of using a actual caster wheel, or previous teams may use one of the large blue or yellow, or actually they're just plastic balls. They come in a whole bunch of different colors. But use one of those large balls as a back wheel to try and make your ride smoother and more accurate. But this is super small and really nice actually. So that's just kind of new in the kit. So you have 2 motors. You have your large motor on the left and your medium motor on the right. Those are the 2 new ones. So if we actually go to comparing them, the NXT, based on tested value, is actually slightly stronger than the large EV3 motor. So you'd think that they'd be the same. The NXT value that I have here is actually the tested value. Meanwhile, the EV3 large motor is the stated value from Lego. Lego just started putting out stall torque and running torque and stuff like that. So the NXT is either the strongest motor or perhaps tied for strongest with the large EV3 motor. And then second, you have the large EV3 motor for strength. And then last, you have the medium motor. So the medium motor's running torque is about half, a little less than half. And then stall torque is a little over a quarter. So as for speed, the medium motor by far is way faster. You can see 240 to 250 RPM, so a lot faster. And the EV3 large motor and the NXT are the same. As for attachment points, the small motor is the medium motor is really easy to attach. The EV3 large motor is a slight improvement, I think, over the NXT motor in manipulating and attaching things. There's a few more attachment points, which is kind of nice. And the NXT motor is just, okay. All the motors are 1 degree accurate per 360 degrees, so there's no real improvement there. As for weight, the EV3 motors are slightly lighter, well, aside from the medium motor, which is obviously smaller too. But that's just a fun fact, I suppose. So as for the touch sensors, there's no real improvement. There's not much you can do. It's only a digital input, so you're only getting 1 or 0. So the only real difference is it's very slightly smaller, like 2 millimeters, but it's not really much of a big deal. So color sensors. So the new EV3 color sensor detects an extra 2 colors, so that's brown and colorless. The old NXT light sensor doesn't have color detection, as you guys should know, and the NXT color sensor only does 6. The sampling rate is the main thing. So sampling rate is how often it's updating its values every second. So the EV3 color sensor is doing it 1,000 times per second. Meanwhile, the NXT color sensor's released value is only 330 times a second. And the NXT light sensor has no official sampling rate, but it's probably similar to the NXT color sensor. So if I had to guess, it's probably 330 hertz. So all of them have light reflection mode and ambient mode, though ambient mode with the EV3 color sensor turns on a blue LED. The other ones just have no LEDs on. And once again, the EV3 sensor is very small, like slightly smaller, like 2 millimeters. It's not too much of a big deal. Ultrasonic sensor. The precision is a lot greater, so plus or minus 1 centimeter, and compared to plus or minus 3 centimeters is going to make a big difference. The depth is about the same, so it can read from 1 to 250 centimeters, though really you are only going to get reliable information from 3 to 160, because it's either way too close or way too far. They're all about the same angle, field of view. They both measure in inches and centimeters, though the new thing with the ultrasonic sensor for the EV3 is there's indication lights, so it can tell what mode it's in. And there's 2 different modes. The new mode is detect interference, or detect another presence, so it can detect if there's another ultrasonic sensor being used in the area, and it'll output a true or false statement for that. So the gyro. So its precision is plus or minus 3 degrees. It has a rate mode, so how fast you're turning, and it'll go up to 440 degrees per second. Its sampling rate, like every other EV3 sensor, is 1,000 hertz or 1 kilohertz. And just as a reminder for people who are using the new EV3 gyro, plus is to the right and minus is to the left, so positive to the right and negative to the left. Sound sensor. So there's no new version of the sound sensor for the EV3, though you can still use the sound sensor with the EV3. It wasn't really that important for FLL since the tournaments tend to be loud and it just measures in decibels, so you can't really use it very effectively while you're at the table. So the bricks, which is kind of the biggest improvement of the EV3 over the NXT. Basically, the EV3, when put in test, when we run a loop and count up as fast as we possibly can, basically the EV3 goes 10 times faster than the NXT. There's all your statistics and info there with the processor, which I won't get into. You guys can read that. The ports, obviously there's one more motor port, so the EV3 can have 4 motors compared to the NXT's 3. Basically the actual wiring speed, like the speed of the communication of the ports, is a lot faster with the EV3, and all the sensors are 1000 hertz compared to 330. It's a slightly larger screen if you care about that, and it's slightly thicker and wider. Actually, it's narrower, sorry. Thicker and narrower. So, I don't know. It's trade-off. The other thing is Wi-Fi you can use with the EV3 if you have a dongle. So that's kind of a new thing, and it also downloads way faster, so that's all good. Kind of the negative is it takes a long time to start up and shut down the EV3. The NXT was about 2 seconds, and the EV3 is 30 to 40 for both turning on and turning off, so it's kind of a drawback. So there's also an SD card slot on the the EV3, so you can store programs on there. It has some built-in apps, which is port view using the auto ID function. There's basically an app that tells you what's in every port and what the current value that it's reading is on the screen, and it'll display it there. And it also has a motor control app, so you can press buttons to control all 4 of the motors. It's got better brick programming, though you wouldn't really want to use it for FLL, but it's not a bad idea to use it instead of getting out a computer. Then you can just whip together a real quick program to just try driving or testing something or moving a motor or something like that. The other thing is it's got button lights, so around the buttons it has a LEDs behind it that can change to green, orange, and red, and they can flash and stuff. So that could be useful for debugging or getting information from the brick. And once again, Wi-Fi dongle. So NXT, you can use the NXT motors and NXT sensors with the NXT brick, obviously. And you can also use the EV3 motors with the NXT brick, but you can't use the EV3 sensors with the NXT brick. As for the EV3, it's compatible with everything, all NXT and EV3 sensors and motors. So moving on to software. This is what it looks like when you have your program open and you just open it up for the first time. We have instructions over right here on the left, and we have a robot educator, which will show you some information on programming and tutorials, and you have all your files which can be accessed through there. It's kind of a nice menu. When you actually open up a new program, we have it's like a PowerPoint mini PowerPoint presentation that you can have in there, which could be useful for workshops or reminders or something. Other than that, not super useful for FLL, more designed for teachers perhaps. And then here's your palette and all your blocks. So there you go, there's just a close-up. There's the green palette, which is movement. The orange palette was flow. Yellow's sensors. Red is like data and operations and doing stuff with variables. Dark blue is advanced things, so communicating, Bluetooth, messaging, raw data, raw sensor values, and then your other tealy blue, I guess, kind of, is your my blocks. Yeah, and again, up there is just your kind of mini PowerPoint presentation where you can put videos, text, images, sound, whatever. So block changes, gonna go through them really quickly. So now there's a new tank drive mode. So in the NXTG software, there was just that slider that you had to turn to choose which way you were going to turn, and it wasn't super accurate, so a lot of teams ended up using one of those blocks for each motor. Now it's all in one block, so that's good. There's also a round block, so round input to the nearest decimal or whatever you decide to choose. And that one's right there. There's extra cases in the flat view for your switch. The NXTG software had it available extra cases with your tabbed view, but not with the flat view. So that's kind of a minor change. There's also arrays, so you can have multiple data points in one variable, so multiple numbers or multiple true-false statements contained within one variable. And you can kind of clean up some of your programs if you have a whole bunch of variables and you just have one wire then. There's also a text merge block, which is right here. So it'll merge up to 3 different sections of text into one line basically, and it'll output that. You can also input, you can actually just type in whatever to A or B or C, so you can kind of I don't know, it's kind of useful if you want something that's going to remain constant, part of that text line. And as you'll notice, all the options are shown on the blocks. So unlike the NXTG software where you have to click on the block to get the information and the options, they're already there and you don't need to click on them. And when you have the wrong port for a sensor or a motor, it has a little like exclamation mark in a yellow triangle that'll show you check this, because either you have the wrong sensor plugged into the wrong port or something, and that's really helpful. The other thing it does is if you have it plugged in when you start programming, it'll automatically change your ports to the correct ones, which is kind of nice. No messing it up as much. And my blocks are not editable after you make them. So basically your logo and your name and your description and stuff you can't change. You can change what's in the my block, but you can't change what the block looks like, which is too bad. And kind of the last thing is the program files. So basically they're all organized in projects. So this is a little easier for you to do version controlling, and basically everything's found within this project. All programs, my blocks, sounds, images, everything. In the NXTG software, my blocks would be universal throughout your programs. So if you want to put a specific my block into a different project, you have to export the my block and import it, which is a little bit of a pain, or you could copy and paste it, I guess, too, but they're not universal, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Depends on your outlook, I suppose. So yeah, everything's just kind of centralized into this one project. It's only one file, so you're only moving around the project file, and it'll move all those programs at the same time. When you download, it'll download all the programs at the same time. It doesn't download just one. And the files are smaller, which is another thing to mention. The EV3 has a whole bunch more room, and the files are smaller. The actual program files, when you download them, are a lot smaller. So you can have a lot more programs. NXT users would often have problems with space filling up and stuff like that. So no worries anymore. And that's pretty much it for this presentation. If you have any questions, then you can either comment on this video, or send us an email at wafflesrobotics@gmail.com.